Hi, my name is Elle Billing. I am a chronically ill queer femme, and I'm tired. I'm here this episode and every episode to dig at the roots of our collective fatigue, explore ways to direct our care in compassionate and sustainable ways, and harness creative expression to heal ourselves and our world. And welcome to Hoorf, radical care in a late capitalist hexscape.
Our guest this week is me, Ricki Cummings. In addition to being the editor of Hoorf, I am also a writer. My newest book, Confessions from a Drainage Ditch, came out in September and is available on Amazon. You can also find my work in Poetry Magazine, as well as Sabatka Literary Magazine, and various other places. You can check me out at rickycummings.com. Welcome me.
Hello, Ricki.
Hello, Elle.
Okay, now I want to do the Animaniacs. Hello, nurse. I almost said that instead of your name, but
It's because you're a vaudevillian weirdo.
it's true. Emphasis on both vaudevillian and weirdo,
Mm-hmm.
and also a secret third thing.
The third thing is ADHD.
Hello, nurse. Like, we don't record the video, but we can see each other. So, like, I popped off screen to put my phone away, and then I popped back onto the mic and did that, and it was really funny.
It was
Like,
incredibly funny. Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
The only thing funnier, I think, that's happened in the last month was when I was in Chicago and we were sitting around the table talking about something. And in a pause, our kid Nat had corn on their teeth and said, "Corn teeth." Like,
Oh, that child's weird. I don't know where they get it from.
comedic timing. You don't know where they get it from?
No
Really?
idea. None
Really?
at all.
Corn teeth has stayed with me for a month. Like, I work at grade inspection now, and I went to work one night, and my supervisors, if there's field corn in a sample of either canola or the sunflower seeds, yeah, like, she takes them out and brings them home for her dog, because apparently her dog likes to eat the corn.
Huh.
And so she saves them in this little origami box on her desk. And so, like, I took a photo of it and sent it to you that one night I was at work.
I remember that. Yeah.
Someone lost their teeth. Anyway, how have you received care this week, Ricki?
I think the biggest thing has just been patience from people in general. Earlier this week, I went to my garage and worked on my little project car that I have. And like every time I go, it makes my back sore because I'm 42 years old, and every time I lean over the hood or something like that, my back gets angry because but so like I was already feeling kind of sore, and then I was doing some housework. It was either Sunday or Monday. I don't remember which now. And we have one of those little office paper shredders. You know, it's basically like a garbage can with a shredder on top. And I was moving that, and I went to set it down, and I got about 3/4 of the way bent over, and my back just exploded in horrifying, agonizing pain.
Oof.
And I couldn't even sit up, really. Like, I could stand and I could lay down, but like anything in between was bad news, but especially bending over. And so that has been healing over the past couple of days. It's just like the muscles are less angry, and like all of my vertebrae have shifted back into position and everything. But that's taken time. And the patience that I'm getting, not just from my child, but like my spouse and even my cats, are like, oh, better be careful around here. That's been nice. That's how I think, received things the most, is just getting a level of patience and grace from people. And that's been really nice. It's been comforting. Reminds me that I'm a part of a group of people and creatures that care about me. So
I'm sorry that happened, but I'm glad that the world that you're in shifted around you to accommodate your recovery.
yeah, and like I was still able to like do some things. I just haven't been as mobile as I normally am, and
Right.
that has helped quite a bit. Is just like the understanding that I can't just like hop up and do something. I would have to warm up to it.
Mhm.
You know, make a dad sound while I was getting up. You know,
I made
that
one of
sort of
those getting out of the recliner the other night. And by getting out of the recliner, I mean failing to get out of the recliner. My parents looked over and they're like, "You're not standing." I'm like, "Nope, failure to launch."
Did you get like halfway up and then sat back down?
Uh-huh. It was kind
Oh,
of
that's great.
embarrassing. Like, oh
That's
man.
great.
Like, we're gonna try this again in a little bit. Like, my dad had recently commended my achievement of attaining dad sneeze level, which felt like a jewel in my crown, but like failure to launch from the recliner was not nearly as I wasn't nearly as proud of that. Oh man.
I have to tell you an aside, just the most ridiculous aside.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
we were driving somewhere in town the other day, and we went past a church. And of course, it had a neon sign because we're in Chicago.
Mhm.
And
Wait, you mean neon, not like regular church sign?
I mean, like
Neon, neon.
neon, yeah.
Okay.
And more than half of the sign was busted out. It was like Philadelphia something church or something like that.
Okay.
And the letters that were still lit said "Hi Chew," and all I could think of was Dad sneezing. Just this ridiculous "Hi Chew." Just it was so. And of course, I was driving at the time, so like I was trying not to laugh myself off the road,
right?
But and then trying to explain that while I was driving at the same time. I'm pretty sure Nat thought I had lost my mind.
Yeah. I mean,
again.
My dad does have very specific sneezes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you mean like my dad sneezing or a dad sneezing?
A dad.
Okay.
But also Dan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it is Advent when we are recording this.
Yep.
Your birthday is on the winter solstice.
It sure
and this
is.
Episode releases on Christmas Day.
Sure does.
It is a season.
Yeah.
I think everyone I know is sort of struggling with the seasonal blues right now because the sun is setting so early.
Yeah. I had mentioned the other day to a friend of ours that it just seems like this year the sun is setting even earlier for some reason. Like I was eating shredded cheese out of the fridge or something, and I looked out the window and it was dark, like literally dark. The streetlights were on, and it was 3:30 in the afternoon. I was like, "Why do we live here?"
Yeah, there was one day where I had been cleaning my room, and I have a difficult time sensing correctly how much time has elapsed doing any activity. And so I
ADHD,
felt like
yeah.
I'd been cleaning my room for hours,
Yeah.
right? I'd been really working hard, and it was dark out. I was like, I've put in a good day. So I took one of my fruit snacks that I used for like sleeping and pain management because I was like, it's got to be close to bedtime because I take those close to bedtime. It was 6:00 in the evening. And I had to spend the next 4 hours trying to be normal around my parents.
That's
and
great.
I failed.
I bet.
Oh my gosh. It's like, I have made a huge mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I was
Mm-hmm.
so zen. I actually didn't care. It was like,
Yeah.
I did clean my room. I did do a lot.
Right?
And it's dark. Like, who cares? I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I only do that if both me and dad are home. Like, if I'm home alone with mom, I don't do that because
Yeah.
somebody has to be able to drive if there's an emergency,
Right.
which we recently had happen. So,
Yeah.
speaking of ways we've received care,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the holidays, my mom's big holiday is Christmas, and
Yeah.
we've spent a lot of time decorating.
Yeah.
So I've had years and years of mixed emotions about the holidays, and
Same, yeah. Different, of course, but same.
there were really two things that have sort of changed my attitude about Christmas. And one of them was a friend of mine posted on Facebook a number of years ago something a little he was trying to be he wasn't trying to be. He was being kind of quippy
Yeah.
and saying, it was something about the store is not observing the liturgical calendar.
Yeah.
It's not a war on Christmas, it's a war on Advent.
Eh,
Because it's like, no, the Christmas stuff's out too early. Like, it's
yeah.
Halloween and then Thanksgiving and
Yeah.
then Advent and then
Yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah.
But I actually stopped to think about it, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, like, we do miss Advent, and that is a whole season
Yeah.
that has a very different feel from Christmas."
Yeah.
And then to layer on top of that, it was actually you talking about Advent and
Huh.
your I don't know, just your feelings around it,
Yeah.
even as a post-church person.
Yeah.
Like, you still have connections to the Advent season and the way that you've talked
Yeah.
about that, and I mean, maybe part of it's because you were born on the solstice, I don't know. Um, it's like, "Oh, I'm an adult now,
Yeah.
I get to pick what I do."
Yeah. The things I observe.
Right, and it's a little different now that I live with my parents and, like, my job is to
Yeah.
help my mom, and I do have to decorate now that it's
Yeah.
not my own home.
Yeah.
But, like, I still get to decide how I feel about it, and I still get to
Yeah.
decide what parts I'm personally observing. And
Right.
then my friend Dean, who's probably listening to this, since I've left Idaho, he has sent me an Advent devotional every year
Oh.
to keep me connected. And
Yeah.
it's such a simple gesture, but it's just when it comes in the mail, I know what it is. I recognize the
Yeah.
packaging. I'm like, "Oh, it's my
Yeah.
Advent devotional." And just, like, being able to choose that state of anticipation and
Yeah.
preparing and introspection as opposed to whatever else Christmas has become
Yeah.
has really honestly, I think it's helped my mental health
Yeah.
significantly over the last
Yeah.
several years.
When I was growing up, I grew up in the Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod, or the WELS, which is famously known among Lutherans as being very conservative. One of our famous alumni is former Minnesota Representative Michelle Bachmann. I don't use the word crazy to describe most people, but many of the behaviors that she had while an acting representative could be described that way. Like she had so many specifically right-wing conservative conspiratorial views that even the Wells finally just cut ties with her.
Mhm.
But it took a long time.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. The thing about growing up where we did, which was the Fargo-Moorhead area, North Dakota, Minnesota border area, is that like conservatism there tries to present itself as a kind of centrism. And for the most part, that works. The idea of like the Minnesota Nice and things like that, like there's an element of truth to that. And in circling back, in the Wells, there is a very specific adherence to the liturgical calendar.
Mhm.
like in the program for each service, it would list whatever day of the season it was, and all of the scriptural readings were all prescribed. This goes this day, this goes this day. These are the things that we study on these days. And the only time I was really aware of what season it was Advent, because there's such a ritualistic slant to it, where one could argue that the entirety of the Advent season, as it's celebrated by various Christian denominations now, is an effort at syncretism, in combining local customs into the church to make it more palatable to the locals. And both you and I come from Northern European, Scandinavian backgrounds, where it gets cold, where the light starts to go out, where a lot of the time, if you're not prepared for the winter, you would die. And the way that has been wrapped into the Christian faith, like specifically the way that we celebrated it, was interesting to me. Even as a kid, I was like, there is something to this part of it specifically. As I've gotten older and understood the world around me more, and taken in more influences from friends I have in other countries and studies I've gone through in school, and just like being a curious person, I have learned that a lot of cultures have that end of year cyclical holiday season where the idea is we're taking stock of the year that has come before and looking forward to the year that's coming. But first, right in the middle of all that, we're going to have a really fucking big party, and we're going to eat, and we're going to be thankful for the things that we have. So I don't think it's any surprise, or coincidence rather, that Advent and Christmas and Yule and Saturnalia and all of those really big festival sorts of things all happen to take place in the middle of the, as far as the global north is concerned, the coldest, darkest part of the year, where you are stuck indoors with your friends, hopefully, and basically forced to endure each other's company for several months. And when I was a kid, my mom was the one that took it upon herself to lead us in Advent devotionals, basically. We had an old set of typed devotionals that I think my grandpa did, several copies of all of the readings and the prayers and this is why we do this, and we had our own Advent wreath at home. And for those who don't know what an Advent wreath is, it's a set of 4 candles for each Sunday in the Advent season, and then a center candle for Christmas. So it's 5 total, and then each candle represents a different aspect of the nativity story. I don't remember them all off the top of my head. You'd think that after 15 years or whatever of doing the same thing when I was a kid, I would remember them. But that portion of it always struck me as being very specifically weirdly pagan. Like, it's a very specifically European thing, I feel like, where, like, obviously white people do not have a monopoly on candle rituals or anything like that.
Yeah.
But like, it seems like a very medieval thing. Medieval European thing.
To have candles in a circle.
to have candles in a circle and you light them because they represent certain aspects of an ancient story that has been handed down from generation to generation, and you read from the sacred scripture every time you do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that ritualistic part of it where we got the whole family together and we read from my dad's Bible of all things, because like I can probably count on one or two hands the number of times I recall my dad going to church that didn't involve a funeral.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it always struck me as weird that we used his King James for that.
For that, like, that's when his Bible was taken out, was
Yeah.
for that particular ritual.
That specific purpose. I don't even know if my dad had any input in that. It always felt like he was doing a thing that he tolerated a thing for my mom's good humor.
Yeah.
It was interesting to me because like a lot of the things, the general things, not the specific Christian things, but a lot of the things that are hallmarks of midwinter festivals are like things my dad was totally into. Just like hanging out inside with your friends, drinking beer, and eating as much as you possibly can. Well, not as much as you can, but like eating good food and enjoying yourselves. And
Eat, drink, and be merry. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the way that those two things collided for me was very formative, I think. The way that my dad and my mom sort of literally and figuratively sparred about belief systems. And having that illustrated to me in such a way when I was a kid made me very interested in the way that other people might do things. And weirdly, as I've gotten older, I appreciate those things more, but not like the specific dogmatic parts of them. I guess the metaphysical idea of them, where like we're all together and we're all trying to get through this really terrible part of the year by spiting it.
Yeah.
You know?
I also think maybe on that same metaphysical level, there is something really powerful about not just, a family or a group of chosen family, right? Being together and doing these rituals together, to spite winter.
Mm-hmm.
But also having a shared language with people in other places who are doing the same rituals
Yeah.
at the same time. And I think the first time I really resonated with that, like, I mean, I grew up in the ELCA, which is like the liberal cousin of Wells.
Yeah.
Like, I knew that we all had the same book of worship, right? But it didn't really register to me the power of like having shared rituals across space and time until
Yeah.
I attended a mass that was done half in English and half in Basque.
Oh.
And the part that was done verbally in Basque was printed in English, and the part that was done verbally in English was printed in Basque. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
like that's why I mean,
Yeah.
Mass before Vatican II, Mass was done in Latin all over the world, right? Same
Yeah.
language for everybody, but it was not accessible, right?
Yeah.
So after Vatican II, you could perform Mass in your home language, and then
Nobody knew what was going on.
right. But then, like, it was still the same rituals and ideas, but in an accessible way, right?
Yeah.
Theoretically. I mean, that's one of my religion professors in college said the point of religion isn't to be religious. Like, that's not the point of any of these things. The point is to like come together as people. Like,
Yeah.
the way he said it, the point of a religion is to trust God and to stand with your neighbor. And that, I think, for me, especially this year, just knowing that there's other people lighting a candle
Yeah.
in the dark and saying, we're trying to build something better.
Yeah.
We don't have it right now, but
Yeah.
like Advent my whole life, they talk about, anticipation. It's the anticipation. It's like we're
Mhm.
preparing, we're waiting. And, sorry, I'm a little scattered. You talked about how when you would do the ritual with your family, you would read specific passages out of your dad's King James Bible. One of them I'm pretty sure is probably when Mary visits her cousin Elizabeth and they're both
Mhm.
pregnant, right?
Mhm.
Pregnancy is long.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of anticipation and waiting, and that's the whole Advent season is like that.
Yeah.
And I think about how for people who follow the Christian tradition, Christmas Day is like this big celebration, right? But like
Yeah.
when you think about it, nothing changed.
Right.
Like literally nothing was different on Christmas Day. Like baby God still had to grow up. So that's what one of my nibblings called him when she was playing. She was playing with our nativity. She was like, "Look, it's baby God." Like, yeah. He still had to grow up. Like nothing, the world was exactly the same on Christmas Day. Like nothing changed. And I feel that so much, especially this year. Bethlehem canceled Christmas. And I was trying to explain that to my parents, and mom's like, you can't cancel Christmas. And I think she's thinking like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Santa calls off Christmas
Mhm.
because of bad weather. But
Mhm.
Christmas still happens, right? But I'm
Yeah.
like, Mom, like Bethlehem.
The Bethlehem.
The
That town is
Bethlehem,
still there.
like the
Yeah.
town still exists. It's not
Yeah.
just in the book. Like
Yeah.
the town of Bethlehem, in solidarity with Gaza, canceled Christmas
Yeah.
weeks ago. Like
Yeah.
they weren't even doing a wait and see. They're like, no,
Yeah. This is a
Nazareth.
terrible idea.
Yeah, like we can't have a party. Like
Yeah.
Nazareth, which is, I looked it up, it is predominantly Muslim and Christian.
Mhm.
Like it got brought up a lot in church, how Jesus was never welcome in Nazareth because what good can, and people were always like, what good can come from Nazareth? It's like people still live there.
Yeah.
And it's mostly Muslims and Christians now.
Yeah.
Like, what are we building? What are we anticipating and creating and hoping for? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
But it just feels especially prescient. Like we should be doing something different.
Yeah.
Like our Advent this year should have been different, and Christmas
Yeah.
should be different. Not, I mean, it shouldn't be what it is. Like we're
Yeah.
doing it wrong.
Yeah. I have a feeling that a lot of the people that do adhere to a lot of the dogmatic things that I skipped out on,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the things I don't necessarily care about anymore, I have a feeling a lot of those people will continue going on through the same rituals and things and not give a thought to why we're doing the things that, like, that was always a thing when I was growing up, was like, why are we doing the things that we're doing and saying the things that we're saying and then doing the opposite and ignoring people who are in need and celebrating the destruction of other people and places, and the, like, ostensibly people that believe the same things that we do, like.
Yeah, I mean, if we take the Christmas story as we were taught it, not only did nothing change immediately on Christmas Day, but like the Holy Family immediately became refugees. They were
Yeah.
Palestinian refugees,
Mm-hmm.
Palestinian Jewish refugees. But like
Mm-hmm. Because the occupying government
the
was
occupying government was bent
hounding
on
them.
murderous intent. Yeah,
Yeah.
killing children. but what could be like a point of rupture, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think is for, I mean, at least a lot of the people we know.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say that we're doing so much better than everybody else, but we run in some diverse-ish circles,
Yeah.
and we're tapped into some justice-minded people, and I think being queer and disabled helps.
Yeah.
keep our eyes open to these things, because war is a disabling event.
Mm. A mass disabling event.
War is a disability justice issue,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to being a justice issue,
Yeah.
in a broad sense. Like, we're all grieving and
Mm.
sad and carving out little spaces for hope and joy and dreaming and trying to co-create something better right now,
Yeah.
where we like, I have a hard time putting it to words.
Yeah.
Like, we wish that there could be a broader movement of people getting on board with doing something different. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
And seriously, Advent could have been like, it could have been so different. Like,
Yeah.
and you pointed out, there are, like, in the global north, in our European heritage traditions, winter is bleak, but every culture has come up with ways to hang on to hope and to
Yeah.
create it out of the void. I mean, that's why we light candles. I
Yeah.
think trying to find those little glimmers and flickers is what's keeping us going.
And we're not the only ones who like candles.
Right,
You
right.
know?
We're not.
Like, this is tied in somehow, but
Mhm.
my conscious brain hasn't figured it out yet. My first stint in college was at an ELCA 4-year college in Moorhead called Concordia College. One of the things that it prides itself on is the annual Christmas concert. It's apparently a thing among Lutheran colleges in the upper Midwest to have a big choral and orchestral concert. Tis. We had one. St. Olaf had one. I think Augie had one, didn't they?
Augie does Vespers, or did when I was there. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
what the Christmas thing is now, if it's the same.
Yeah.
But when I was there,
Yeah.
it was Vespers. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
multi-night.
And so it's something that they had been doing since like the 40s or something like that. Concordia specifically was very big on its choral programs, the world famous Concordia Choir and whatnot. The concert itself is every choir that Concordia had. So it was the Concordia Choir, concert choir, which I was a part of, the freshman choir. Those are all mixed choruses, and then 2 women's choirs of upper class and freshman women, and the orchestra, and the bell choir. So like it would be like 500 musicians all together for this concert. And some of the pieces were performed by all of those musicians. So some of the larger pieces, the individual choirs would start practicing in like October. School would start in August, and they would have their fall concerts in the middle of October. And then from that point on, it was pretty much Christmas stuff, because the Christmas concerts were always like the first weekend in December. So like solidly in the middle of Advent. They were always huge productions. They had they still have huge painted murals. Every year's program was different. It was a huge production, combining all of the different creative departments. Lighting would be handled by the theater department. Sound would be handled by the AV department and things like that. And the way that things would come together, because we never did full dress rehearsals until like the day before the concerts. And I want to say there were 4 performances in Moorhead. And then we would all pack up and go to Minneapolis, and we would do the concert in Minneapolis too. I think one of the women's choirs stayed home every year, but because we would sing at Orchestra Hall in Minneapolis, which doesn't have quite as much stage space as the massive gymnasium at Concordia. But the thing that those concerts provided me with, aside from the transcendental unity of music, which could probably be a whole other thing, was the way that not only the college community came together, but it was a huge part of the local tradition. Those concerts were huge. Every night was like 4,000 or 5,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And the regional tradition, because every year we would go to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and almost every year the various concerts would get broadcast on PBS and the local PBS and stuff. Like, it was the unity of the performers, it was the unity of the community. But there were two things about the performances that always got me. One of them was that the first thing that we were instructed is, since almost everyone is standing the entire time, if you're gonna go down, signal the person next to you by squeezing their hand and then sit down if you have the thought to do that. And then the choir would just close in front of you like you were never there, just absorbed by the group.
Mm-hmm.
And there were several occasions where both I squeezed someone else's hand and someone else squeezed my hand, but it was never because we were going down. It was always because we were, as performers, we were overwhelmed. It was a very big, overwhelming experience. The other thing was, in the middle of every year's performance is a section of Christmas carols. Each choir has a carol, and then everyone would join together for Silent Night. And Silent Night has been my favorite hymn since I was a tiny, tiny baby. And having 5,500 people all singing the same song together at the same time in the same place is one of the most overwhelming, unbelievable feelings, especially when it's your favorite song.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've been to other concerts where groups all sing. I felt a similar feeling to it, like when I went to U2 and 60,000 people are singing "Where the Streets Have No Name." Like, everyone just goes fucking nuts when that song comes up. That's how that's how it feels inside that auditorium with all of those people.
Mm-hmm.
It's an amazing feeling of unity that, were it not for my upbringing, I would have never experienced. Even by that point, I had pretty much lost my faith. Like, I still don't believe most of the Christian dogma. I don't believe that any of it is necessarily real. But that feeling of correctness and unity is something that I wish I could have every year. And that's the part of the Advent season that I like. It's hard to be a person. It's even harder to be a person in areas of war, of hunger, of discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose of Advent, as it is presented to us, is giving birth to a better world, a better place, something better than now. And I think that's what we miss a lot. There's a purpose to the ritual.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason we're doing the things that we're doing. And I agree that that part of the sentiment has been lost. The unity part of it.
It's hard to be a person.
Yeah.
But being a person in community with other persons. That's what makes it bearable.
It's less hard. Yeah.
It's less hard. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I hope we make it through this winter.
I think we will.
Yeah.
I hope more people than just us do.
Yeah. Merry Christmas, I guess.
Merry Christmas, I guess.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Hoorf. To view the complete show notes and all the links mentioned in today's episode, or to get a full transcript of the episode, visit hoorfpodcast.com. That's HOORF podcast.com. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you can receive new episodes right when they're released. And if you're enjoying our podcast, I'd love to have you leave us a review in Apple Podcasts. Reviews are one of the major ways that Apple ranks their podcasts, so even though it only takes you a few seconds, it really does make a difference for us. Become a patron. For $3 a month, you can support the creation of this podcast, pay my editor, and join a community of fellow caregivers out here just doing our best. Thank you again for joining me, Elle Billing, in this episode of Hoorf. Until next time, be excellent to each other. Hoorf is hosted by Elle Billing at Elle and Wink. Audio editing by Ricki Cummings at Ricki Poo. Music composed by Ricki Cummings. Hoorf is a production of Elle and Wink Art Studio, all rights reserved. Hoorf Podcast can be found on social media channels at Hoorf Podcast, at HOORF Podcast.